Hey everyone, this is another Booktube channel, and today I'm trying something a little bit different. I literally just finished reading The Lost Metal by Brandon Sanderson like 10-15 minutes ago. I set up the camera and I just wanted to do a quick, unscripted, kind of filtered word vomit type of review, see if this works out. So apologies if this is a little choppy and if I stutter and stammer a lot. So, The Lost Metal, Brandon Sanderson. It is the final book in Mistborn Era 2. It's the 7th overall Mistborn book. I am probably in the minority here, but I actually like Mistborn Era 2 a lot more than Era 1. I think I'll be doing a separate video that does a little bit of a deeper dive into my reasons why. But for now, I just want to talk about The Lost Metal, my initial reactions to it. Quick plot overview. It's been 6 years since the events of the Bands of Mourning, the previous book. And this is going to be mild spoilers, I guess, for that previous book, just in the plot synopsis itself. But I will be avoiding major spoilers for this book, so you'll be pretty safe. If you've read Bands of Mourning but you haven't gotten to this yet, you should be fine. But it's 6 years after the Bands of Mourning, and Wax is retired basically from his profession as a lawman, and he's more entered the world of politics now, advocating for peace in Elendel as the outer cities are kind of pushing for war, particularly the new southern continent that was discovered in the Bands of Mourning. Wayne has also gone straight in this one. He's gotten an actual job as a copper. He is Maricy's partner on the constable force in Elendel. When an outside threat from both the outer cities and beyond rears its head and threatens Elendel, the gang must get back together for one last adventure and try to put a stop to it. I've got mixed feelings about The Lost Metal. If you are a big Brandon Sanderson fan and you are caught up on the Cosmere as it stands now, meaning you've read Elantris, you've read Warbreaker, you've read all of the Stormlight Archive and all of the novellas that are collected in Arcanum Unbounded, then you will get a lot out of The Lost Metal and you will appreciate it on a much deeper level than someone who hasn't completely caught up on the Cosmere. That's where I feel like it's kind of hard to rate this book, because if I were reading this as someone who was just reading Mistborn, I wonder if some of the reveals in here, or if some of the world-building explanations that are present here, if it'll be difficult to take in, or if it'll really even make sense. Of all of the Cosmere books that I've read so far, and I am pretty much caught up, I haven't read Rhythm of War or Dawnshard yet, that's on my TBR for 2023, but of all the books I've read, The Lost Metal actually does the most in terms of world building and explaining the Cosmere as a whole, and how it works, and how the different gods work, and how powers work. So it's a very important book in the Cosmere, and it's interesting that it's the 7th book in the Mistborn series that does that. So that was my main takeaway from The Lost Metal, is that if you're only reading the Mistborn series, that it might be kind of tough to keep up with these new characters that are being introduced in here, and these new magic systems that are being introduced here, because there are some new ones that do crop up that are only new to you if you haven't read the extended Cosmere universe. Surprisingly, my favorite parts of the Mistborn series as a whole aren't really the action sequences, which I think can sometimes be a little repetitive. It's all in the character work. So the characters here, I think, are the strongest that Sanderson has written throughout the Mistborn series. I've always liked Wax, I've always liked Wayne. I think in this book, there are some times where his inability to take things seriously gets in the way of a lot of serious moments a little too frequently. Those kind of sometimes struck me as not quite authentic, but they were still fun, and it's a quick read, so that type of mood, I'm completely okay with letting that go by. Marisy's a really great character to put next to those guys as a bit of a foil who's on the same side. Steris, who became a great character in Bands of Mourning, who I fell in love with there. She continues to be really great to read here. And we also get a few more characters introduced that are really interesting and add more to not just the world of Mistborn, but to the Cosmere as a whole. The action is fun, and Sanderson continues to come up with creative ways to push the magic system even further. It's been really cool to see I guess what it would call the Ars Arcanum at the back of the book grow after each installment as new metals are discovered and new interactions are discovered, and it all feels very natural and organic to the story and not just shoved in like Sanderson needed to find a way out of a certain situation, so he just was, oh, this metal, now it can do this. It doesn't feel like that. It feels organic, and it feels like it's just a natural unfolding of the natural history of this world. I don't know that I would call this the strongest book in Mistborn Era 2, just from a plot and story perspective. It is really good, and once you get to the about 250 page mark, that last half of the book really goes at a good clip. It's paced very well. I would still say The Bands of Mourning is my favorite book in the series, but this one, particularly if you are deep into the Cosmere and you want answers, or at least maybe not answers, but a little bit more of an explanation as to what the heck is going on in this gigantic universe, this book is really satisfying for that purpose. So I think that about wraps up my initial reactions to The Lost Metal. I did like it a lot. I would say that if you want to get the most out of it, you should probably put in the extra work and read Brandon Sanderson's other Cosmere works. If you're reading just Mistborn on its own, some of the new world building that's introduced in this book might be a little foreign and weird, but I still think it's easy to follow for the most part, and you should still get a lot out of it. If I have to assign a subjective and arbitrary grade to this book, I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10. 8 if you've read the Cosmere books, 7 if you haven't. Do with that what you will. Did you think The Lost Metal was a satisfying conclusion to Mistborn Era 2? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.